You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Terminó Axel Schwarzenegger.
Ya lo hacen, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, 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 golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Kevin, the TFC fans are going to start to get like some anger if that Schweinsteiger goal keeps happening there. They might get reminded of the fire that's right on their heel.
Well, yeah, you have to keep them motivated. No, it's such a weird feeling it must be for Toronto to be up there in the standings. So you kind of have to put things into jeopardy to sometimes make sure that run continues.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, they did have last year, and they were pretty good last year, and especially in that playoff run. But it's the Chicago Fire, man. It's like we're partying like it's 1998. Nice reference there. But anyway, Simon Fudge is in Vancouver. He joins us to talk a little Confederations Cup and some BC Whitecaps news as well. How you doing, Simon?
How are you guys? I'm good.
Good. Let's just jump right in with the Confederations Cup, a tournament that acts as a bit of a dress rehearsal for next year's FIFA World Cup. Just in a general sense, having watched this, you think that the Russians are doing a good job hosting this thing?
From what I understand, yeah, I think it's gone well. I mean, obviously, as you say, it's for so many different groups and peoples, including the guys I kind of work with at FIFA.com. It's a really good thing. To do a dry run and try some new things in terms of, certainly in our case, how we're going to cover the World Cup next year, to the people on the ground who have probably been spending years of planning but haven't had, obviously, a chance to put a lot of that stuff into practice. So a tournament like this on a much smaller scale, involving only 8 teams and 4 venues, I think provides a huge amount of feedback and stuff about a year out from the real big event. So in many cases, it's a very good thing, I think, for everyone involved and for the teams as well, because at least, let's say, 5 to 6 of these 8 teams are going to probably be back at the big show in a year's time, and they've been able to get a sense of what the country is like, what the logistics are, and that's going to have an influence on where their base camp's going to be and all that sort of thing. So they're probably looking at it from a point of view that it's not only a competitive tournament, and they want to do well and perform, and players are obviously wanting to put in performances that put them in the reckoning to be back there in a year's time. But it's got all of that sort of off the field logistical stuff that they get a particular advantage of, that the teams that will qualify for this tournament just won't have that opportunity to do.
Simon, let's turn our attention on the pitch. And the impression I've been left with watching this tournament is that we all should be a little bit scared in Germany right now because of the massive amount of depth that they have to be able to send what is a very young team over there. I don't know whether you want to qualify B team, C team, whatever, but by and large, they've sent a younger team over to have a good look at them, and yet they continue to maybe be the most impressive team in this tournament. So you to speak to that and sort of what your overall impressions of the play have been.
Well, the Germans they just keep ticking things over. I think that's kind of the scary thing with it. I think they've used this tournament in a very, very good way, and it just goes to the kind of players they're producing these days, and the kind of confidence that someone like the main head coach, Joachim Löw, can have in the younger players. And I have to think that, especially after yesterday, where they really got to grips with the game against Cameroon in the second half and played in such a way that he said at the end of the game he was quite proud of the players. He's probably come away, even from the 3 games so far, thinking to himself that he's got a lot of decisions to make in a year's time, because there's no question he's been probably given a huge boost of confidence in terms of thinking that he's got a whole host of options to choose from the way that his players have played. I mean, if they go on and actually win this tournament, he's certainly going to have a feeling of having to give a lot of thought to what his 23-man team is going to look like when they go to the World Cup next year. Because the thing is that the way the young players have been performing, they've been excellent. I think the overall tournament, it's been good. I think all the teams have contributed to making it a fairly entertaining spectacle. I actually think it's now going to get a little bit better because I've got a good feeling with the semifinal matchups. But I think we've seen a lot of good things. Maybe a little bit disappointed with Russia. I thought after what was not as good, not a really very good performance against Portugal, they put themselves behind the 8 ball in that game against Mexico. And in some ways, I was not surprised that they ended up not coming out on top in that. And so some big lessons learned there. And I do wonder a little bit if their head coach, Stanislav Cherchesov, is under a little bit of pressure now because I think there were some expectations that they would do better in this tournament in Russia than they actually did. But the game against Portugal, I think, really let them down in the end, and that just left them with too much work to do. And they played Mexico, even though obviously they made a very good start in that game. Mexico's still frustrating in many ways. They can either be fantastic or they can be very vulnerable. It's going to be really interesting to see how they match up against that young German side in the semis. But as for the likes of a Chile and Portugal, I do like the way the Portuguese are playing right now. And if you're going to put some money down, I think, on winning this tournament, I would think the Portuguese have probably shown enough consistency. They really haven't been flustered too much in the 3 games they've played, where obviously Chile yesterday weren't necessarily at the best, and they're going to have to be far better in the semifinals. So I think we've seen a bit of good things, but I'd even go as far as saying that from the surprise that Portugal provided all of us in winning Euro 2016, not necessarily looking all that great when they played through the tournament in France last year. That win looks to have given them a huge amount of confidence, in my opinion, and I actually think they're odds on to win this competition.
You mentioned the semifinals. They are set this Wednesday. We will have both at 2 p.m. Eastern, Portugal, Chile. That will be 11 a.m. Pacific, and Germany, Mexico at the same time on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern and 11 a.m. Pacific. Portugal, Chile. You mentioned Portugal. It's a team that has a run in this tournament that's very reminiscent to their last European Championship, where not necessarily impressive as a whole in group stage, but getting the job done, grinding it out, and seeing a Ronaldo that's not just wanting to have the ball, but wanting to make his teammates better. What is your thought on Portugal's group stage and their chance against Chile on Wednesday?
I think they've got a very good chance. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. It could be one of those that could go to penalties and in the end, because there's a lot of experience in that Chilean side, and I think they'll show up and play and battle it out with Portugal on Wednesday. Yeah, there's no question. Ronaldo is the catalyst for that team, but the thing that I think is starting to emerge a little bit is he's got players around him, and I think Fernando Santos, the coach, knows this as well, in the likes of the 2 Silvas, Bernardo Silva, Andre Silva, for example, that are providing a lot of different options. And I just feel a little bit that, and a Portuguese fan may agree or disagree, I'm not sure, but where so much a year ago it was about Ronaldo and co, I feel this is more of a team. They've got more other players. They've got other players in this team for me at the moment that are emerging that are prepared to step up and do a job and get things done. And that takes a little bit of the reliance off Ronaldo, which I think is fantastic because it makes them a much more dangerous team. So I think in a lot of ways, they're actually making good use of this tournament because they themselves are kind of developing, because they've got some good young players that are coming through here that I think are starting to make statements for themselves. And like I say, I think in some ways that makes them the odds-on favorite at the moment, maybe only slightly, to win this competition. And if that ends up being the case, I think one of the things to look at is some of the other players that are that are kind of coming along and are becoming important pieces in this Portuguese squad that I think we have to start thinking about over the next year. The other semifinal, I think, is also a very intriguing one as well. It's a really good matchup because, again, another big test for this young German side. Do they have enough about them in terms of being able to curtail the threat, particularly the attacking threat of this Mexican side? Mexico, Osorio got his tactics right against Russia, and I hope that he goes with a lot of the same guys in terms of the starting 11 as he does against Germany, Irving Lozano being top of that list. I'm a big fan of his, and I think he is at a point right now where he can provide the most influential or the biggest attacking influence in their side. And they kind of, for me, I think they need that because they've got to try and test this young German side. I mean, German teams are structured and organized in such a way that they make it very difficult for the opposition to break them down. So for Osorio and Mexico, it's about, using their most dangerous and most informed weapons to try and do just that. And I think we've got ourselves two very, very good semifinals, but I would almost say that the better of the two is probably the one on Thursday.
You mentioned Mexico. Mexico, it's either hit or miss. They either win a competition or find a way to spectacularly lose in the game. I am impressed by Juan Carlos Osorio and how he's been able to put the generations together. The veterans, the young players, the established Mexican stars that plays in Liga MX and the one international ones, and altogether it kind of have an interesting mix for Mexico. And I am still waiting for that moment where at the senior level, the have that trophy, that big victory, that big moment that we have seen in the younger class divisions of the national team. When you're looking at Mexico and on Thursday against Germany, like you mentioned, it's going to be a cracker of a game. It's going to be maybe the final before the final, depending on the other side. There's a lot of those four teams. That's what I like about the Confederations Cup too, Simon, is because of the very small field, the team had to qualify. It's a very high level. Yeah, you have like Russia and Cameroon were not necessarily at the same level, but now in the knockout stage, those two games are quite impressive. And out of Germany and Mexico, Mexico, is it their moment? Could it be this year, or is it still in preparation for next year?
Oh, they've got every chance of doing so. I certainly have a lot of confidence in the way that they're playing under Osorio, and I got a feeling the players have a lot of confidence playing under him. I think one of the tough things about a big job like that's got a huge amount of scrutiny, particularly from the media, is the way that you want to play and the way you're going to set your stall out. If it provides dividends in getting results, you don't just get the confidence of the fan base and the media. You also get the confidence of the players that are going to be playing for you, because the players will have the feeling that that they're being set up to go out and be able to win a game. And what they've really done in terms of the record that they have under him is basically performed. Basically, that's that very heavy 7-1 defeat to Chile in the Copa America last year, which I think eliminated them with no real blemish. And it's, for the most part, they've been excellent. They've been, I think in World Cup qualifying here, we got an early glimpse of it here against Canada, a little over a year ago at BC Place, just what they were shaping into, the world-class quality that they had. Not only that, tactically in that particular game, how they badly exposed Canada in the fullback situations and hurt them very badly and went on and won comfortably. A lot of those types of things, and the way that Osorio organizes and studies other teams is a big plus for Mexico with the talent that he's got to work with. I think they've got every chance of certainly making this tournament their moment. I did think that this was in what is obviously a very busy summer for the Mexican national team program, the one that they really wanted to go and win. And I think that they're certainly in good position. I've gained a lot of confidence that they have the ability to do it, from the fact that they overcame the adversity of being a goal down to the host team, who needed a result, and went on and won the game against Russia in their last group game. That gives me a lot of confidence that they can deal with difficult situations, which are going to happen, particularly when they're in the World Cup next year. and it's about how do you overcome them. And I think they've got enough strength and mental resolve in the side to be able to go and ultimately get the right result in the end. So, yeah, I have as much confidence in them certainly getting to the final. I think, as you say, I think the semifinal they're going to play against Germany is going to be a cracking game. And if they get Portugal in the final, that I think that leads to another really, really interesting match to watch next weekend.
Simon, of the 4 teams eliminated, I wanted to talk just a little bit on Cameroon. I remember quite well 27 years ago, people talking about that Cameroon team, that great Cameroon team from Italia 90, and how that would mark the breakthrough of African soccer on the world stage. We haven't yet seen it. Are we ever going to see it?
It's hard to say. But the unpredictability of African soccer is always kind of leaves it out there a little bit. It could happen, but it could be a bit of a excuse me, a hit and miss kind of situation. And it doesn't just involve Cameroon. It's really any African side that could potentially emerge and do something on the world stage. They've obviously done it at the youth international level, but at this level, it's been a different story. There probably needs to be more stability in African soccer in a lot of those countries in order for that sort of level of consistency to be implemented and put in place. That we've talked about a number of teams that here that have a lot of that sort of stability, and that's still sort of missing within the kind of infrastructure of African soccer. That unfortunately makes it much more difficult to know if an African side like a Cameroon or a Nigeria or a Cote d'Ivoire or anybody coming out of the continent can go on, win a major international tournament. It's going to be interesting over the next little while to see. I mean, right now, the thing that with this Cameroon side, for as much as they gave glimpses of good things, they went with a fairly young side. I think predominantly with the group that went and won the African Cup of Nations earlier in the year. Are they actually going to be able to qualify for Russia 2018? There's no guarantee in the group that they're in right now that they're going to come out on top. So that lack of consistency within the African game itself, say with the clubs, and that there's still a big step forward, I think, that needs to take place, where we can then have that conversation and say this particular African country or these qualified African countries at a World Cup are going to really offer a serious threat of winning the competition.
All right, Simon, let's turn our attention to end the interview to maybe some Whitecap stuff, and then you had mentioned some D3 news out of BC to end the interview. But I'm going to go with the Whitecaps. Just in a general sense, we're halfway through the season. Where do you see this club? Are they where you thought they'd be? Do you think that they should be better? Just where do you see the Whitecaps at the halfway point?
I think they are. They're 2 games short of, I think, or 1 or 2 games short of the midway mark. But we're actually 2 games short. They would be. But they're more or less where I thought they would be. It's been a challenging time because obviously the injuries that they have picked up and a number of other things as well have not helped as well. But they've been able. But I see a bit of a resolve in the side right now that gives me the impression that really what they're needing to do is what they really needed to set their objective up. They're staying in the conversation in terms of, being in the playoff situation, and they know full well that with some more pieces coming back from injury, that they can get to the next gear and play a lot better. The ultimate thing, like it is for every MLS side, is you want to be playing your best soccer at the right time of year, and they have every opportunity of finding the next gear if they can get healthy and get some players together and get some players back and put some things together and get a little bit of consistency. They've been scrapping and grinding out results, which I think's put them in the right position, and they can say to themselves that they've got brighter days ahead, because it's been a bit of a juggling act, I think, for Carl Robinson, certainly at the moment, to have to play with a number of different players. Obviously, there's been the Shannon Williams situation, which on the pitch is not an ideal situation because obviously he was brought in to be the starting right back in the side, but they're also obviously missing the likes of Kendall Waston and Christian Bolaños. So and Jordy Reyna is still to come back from that broken foot that he had in preseason. He was looked on as being a big off-season acquisition. So you've got a lot of pieces here that would have been looked at as being starting 11 players that we haven't had a chance to see or are not in the lineup. So it's made for a lot of makeshifting kind of work to get them and get them in. I mean, obviously, the last two games, it's provided a couple of draws. I was a little disappointed with the 2-2 draw against Minnesota, but it was probably the right result. They didn't play very well in the second half. David Ousted has to hold his hands up and take a huge amount of responsibility for the first goal that he conceded to Francisco Calvo. That should have been a save. And Minnesota have a little bit about them. Certainly, if they get momentum, they can be a problem for any team. But overall, with that team where they are right now, I think they are where I thought they would be for the moment. And what that meant and what that is that they're still in the conversation with every chance if they can get their pieces put together and get it right, really kick on and maybe be a bit more of a threat at the right time of year. I mean, that's what they've got to try and aim for. So I wouldn't think that there's a lot of panic right now amongst the team or the fan base in the city at the moment. They're a 500 side. They've shown good glimpses, but anyone who follows this team closely knows there's a number of players to come back from injury that I think are going to provide a big boost when at the right time. So a bit of a wait and see, but I think the big part of this season coming up that where we could be talking about Vancouver has yet to arrive.
Simon, over the last few years, we've seen the emergence of a Division 3 in Canada. We've seen the PLSQ in Quebec. We've seen League 1 Ontario in Ontario. And there's been rumors and rumbling over the last 2 years that maybe or maybe not a league of that kind could appear in British Columbia. You have more on this.
I'm going to say it might have been about. I mean, I'm not sure if it's fresh news, but it's certainly relevant news. It might be about. Well, I'm going to say it was about 2 months ago. I had a conversation with a person I know very well. He's very high up with one of the senior men's leagues out here in BC. And unfortunately, he said to me that a proposal had gone around from BC Soccer to various interested stakeholders about trying to start some kind of regional Tier 3 league out here for next year, and having sort of put the proposal out with a lot of numbers, how much it would cost, probably based on the structure of a League 1 Ontario side, although I can't be sure if that was actually the case. They got no interest back, unfortunately. So from the looks of it, there won't be a regional Tier 3 league starting up next year here in BC. And I basically, in my opinion, that leaves a situation where there's a big selling job that still needs to take place amongst the groups and organizations that you would look to that would be part of such a league, because obviously they don't see the sense of wanting to go down that road. And so they need to be given a bit more of a selling job as to why it should be in their best interest and certainly to the wider interest of developing the game in this country to put such a structure in place. And I don't know if that would require the likes of a Dino Rossi or people from League 1 Ontario having to come out here, do some workshops with those clubs and on behalf and with BC Soccer to try and explain what they've done in Ontario, or the people who run PLSQ in Quebec to say why they went down that road and why it should be in the best interest of doing it. But I have a feeling that something along those lines needs to be done, because obviously having initially put this proposal out, from the sounds of it, there were no takers. And so the whole project and idea at this moment has stalled out here, as far as I know.
All right, Simon. Anything else you would like to add on? We haven't spoken in a while, so we've talked about Vancouver. We've talked about D3. What is your thoughts on the national team? Over the last few weeks, we've seen Zambrano take over on the national team side and able to mix things up, and we're heading towards the Gold Cup. So what do you think about Zambrano and lately his starting of his tenure with the national team?
Well, I think it's been good so far. I'm also quite curious to see, because he's supposed to be in charge of the entire men's national team program down through the youth ranks. I think there's some decisions that need to be made there on the coaching front. It's safe to say that that Canadian soccer fans should have been very disappointed by the qualifying campaigns of our under-17s and under-20s for those respective age group World Cups this year. They were dismal qualifying campaigns, to the point where they should be considered unacceptable. And the likes of Rob Gale, certainly because of the two campaigns that he's overlooked, should no longer be the under-20 national team head coach. I would like Mr. Zambrano to sort that out, as well as the entire structure, because why we've been able to get that sorted out on the women's side and not on the men's side has been a real head scratcher for me over the last 3 years. In terms of in being in charge of the senior team, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a slow start. He's got to obviously go with young players, and I would really like for him to go with a fairly young squad to the Gold Cup here. It might have an impact on our ability to be able to compete sufficiently, but the program, even at the end of the Brazil 2014 qualifying campaign, was in a real sort of rebuilding mode, and I felt that even at that time there needed to be more radical movement afoot to really go young then. And I think because of my issues over the appointment of Benito Floro and the 3 years that were wasted as a result, as well as a huge amount of money along the way as well, that really stalled the program for 3 years. Hopefully under Zambrano we're moving in the right direction, because this is a guy that gives me the impression of being the person who actually probably should have succeeded Stephen Hart, as opposed to have succeeded Benito Floro. So we wait and see. But I would like him to go to the Gold Cup with a very young side. We have to be realistic in terms of what the team is capable of doing, but it's got to be about young players. And it's got to be a tournament in which he starts to establish what the core of his group is going to be going forward here. And you never know, particularly because a lot of the other stronger countries in this tournament are certainly not necessarily going to be sending their strongest teams. They may show up and perform, which would be a delightful surprise, because that will give us the confidence and the feeling that there might be a bright future ahead for the men's national team. But I think for Zambrano, it's got to be a tournament in which he starts to identify what his core group is and who he can potentially rely on a regular basis. He's got to make this tournament something where he gets that well established.
Simon Fudge of FIFA.com. Thank you very much for your time today, Simon.
Thank you, guys.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back. Thanks again to Simon for all of his great stuff. I just wanted to touch, because Simon works for FIFA, so it's a bit difficult to ask him questions about the future of FIFA events, Kevin. But the Confederation Cup, does it have a future?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, because you have to look at what's the purpose of this tournament. The dress rehearsal, or let's check on you a year out, what you're doing to make sure that you're ready for the World Cup type of tournament. I can understand the reason behind having it. I can understand that it's a tournament, international level teams with usually, well, it's always good teams. It's the winners of the continent. So you actually have great teams, or at least they found a way to win the Continental Championship and get into this tournament. It's an achievement sometimes for smaller countries, where, like, example, the Cameroon, to qualify to get the ticket after winning the AFCON last year, or earlier this year. Is it earlier this year, last year? Anyways, one of the two. And they got the tickets for this Confederations Cup. It does act like a second type of target. Like your first target, if you're an emerging national team, to maybe strive towards and test yourself. And as well, it's a reward of some sort, where if you're doing the right things and you're slowly becoming a better country and you think you're a contender for the World Cup and winning in the Continental Championship, winning this tournament, kind of announce you to the world stage. So I do see not necessarily a necessity, but I do see the use of this tournament.
Yeah, look, I mean, the problem with it is a couple things. I think if you're looking at the major confederations, you're looking at South America, you're looking at Europe, they don't necessarily view the Confederations Cup as a title to win on its own. It's there. It's something they do. You look at the way Germany's treating this tournament as basically an opportunity for them to look at some younger players, and I'm sure they find value on that. But by and large, they're not going to, like, there won't be celebrations in the streets of Berlin if Germany wins Confederations Cup. Like, let's be honest here. That said, if Mexico wins it, I think that they will look at it as something significant. I think that the USA, when they went to the final back about 7-8 years ago now, they looked at that as something that was, well, they still talk about that in glowing terms, beating Spain in that tournament. So it does have some value, I think, to the smaller confederations. Now, the complication with this tournament, of course, moving forward is 2022. The 2022 World Cup is going to be held in November. There is literally no way that the 2021 Confederations Cup can be held in November. The European teams would revolt. The club teams, I'm saying here, that just simply will not happen for there to be a Confederations Cup tournament happening in the fall. And the reason, of course, we're having the World Cup in the fall, other than FIFA's strange decision to hand the World Cup to a desert, is because it's dangerous to play football games in the summer in that part of the world. So what do you do in 2021? Do you have the host nations host the games in a different part of the world? That seems kind of pointless. I just don't know what the answer is. Now, the one thing that I was on Sirius FM filling in for Rudy Schuler for Canada FC on Friday, or it aired on Friday. I taped it earlier than that, but nonetheless,
yes, we're not gonna reveal their secrets.
Yeah, what I said on that show, and the show's aired now, so I can say it here, is that I think the answer for what's needed, because I do think a dress rehearsal is useful for the host country. But think about what happened in 2014 here in Canada. The 2014 Women's Under-20 Championship took place here as the dress rehearsal for the 2015 Women's World Cup. Now, right now, FIFA uses the men's under-20s as sort of a tournament that they move around, and there's a certain amount of value and profit to that tournament that makes it a valuable commodity. But I think that maybe therein lies your answer. Or maybe you make it U17 if you want to keep that U20 to switch around. But some youth tournament that you give to the host country of the World Cup a year out, where they host at the same time and they try and make it a mini World Cup. I think that benefits both. I think that the kids that are playing in that tournament, it might feel special for them to be part of that, but nonetheless, that's sort of an aside. But I think it obviously would be even a better test for them, because the tournament would be bigger and it would be more important, and they would actually be putting a championship out there that would matter to the people participating in a greater way than I think the Confederations Cup does, Kevin.
Yeah, it might be a good idea. I never thought about it that way, but it could be a good idea. Maybe you make it a little bit bigger too, so you actually test the host capabilities a year out. Maybe you actually go to, I don't know, 16 teams of youth, 16 youth teams. And,
I think the U20 tournament is that big already. So, yeah, that's what I'm getting at, yeah.
It will make sense. So that way you can have like a more, what we call dress rehearsal, where you actually test the capabilities of hotel and you figure out logistically what doesn't work. And maybe the World Cup will go more smoothly because of it. Let's face it, the Confederations Cup, it's to such a level that you test like 1 or 2 stadiums, but you don't really test infrastructures of the whole city and with fans. You kind of need a bigger tournament to do that. So maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah. The other part of it too, when you're talking about senior internationals, is that look at Alexis Sanchez. He basically will be playing consecutive football with no more than a 3 or 4 week break in any given season for 4 straight years, because he played 2 straight Copas. He's playing the Confederations Cup right now. You assume Chile will make the World Cup. That's insane. And that ultimately is going to probably take a year off his career. It would have to. The wear and tear on your body. He's not getting a break. Every elite athlete in any elite program, if this was 5 rings, we'd talk about training right now and talk about how, athletes need to taper and need to do things in a training regimen to make sure that they're peaking at the right times. Well, these guys aren't getting a chance because they're being asked to constantly perform at the top level. And, when you're talking about a guy like Sanchez, he's, obviously competing with Arsenal or maybe a new team soon.
Oh, maybe was competing with Arsenal.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see whether he's wearing light blue next year. But
now he's going to be competing against Arsenal, probably.
Yeah, we'll see. But at any rate, it's an elite player, but he's constantly having to battle at the top of the Champions League, at the top of the Arsenal won't be next year, but you know what I mean? Constantly having to play. And is that good for them? Is having this Confederations Cup, this dress rehearsal, forcing these senior internationals to come in there and do this, is it, obviously they're going to sell more tickets for it in the local markets. And you and I and others, I do enjoy watching these games, but it's not always about what I enjoy. At some point we have to think about the athletes. And I think that maybe it might be time to consider the Confederations Cup's future, especially when you look at the complications around 2022 and when the hell are you going to play this thing? You could play a U20 tournament in November as a test event in Qatar. You could not play the Confederations Cup in 2021. So maybe that's the answer, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a good thought exercise to see what we can do with this. Because I'm sure if you look at the ratings, they're probably terrible. I'm sure if you're looking at attendance in Russia, I don't know if people were told to attend like we've seen in other places of this world with prior big events. But it's always an interesting question to see, should we have this tournament? Should this amount of resources that are being spent be put maybe to better use? It's always a good thought process. Yeah,
look, I think that if you put the U20 in there, which to me it works on the women's side, that's your answer to me, and I keep coming back.
Whoa! I just had a flash.
Okay, go ahead.
How about the Women's World Cup a year before? In the same host venue.
Okay, I know I can hear some of our female fans screaming right now that would maybe make them seem like they're a second-class event if you were to do that. Would also screw up their cycles. But I see what you're saying there, that you're trying to package the women's and the men's World Cup together so that they have to do both. But then what's the test for the women's event then?
No,
if you're making the women's event the test for the men's event,
you don't necessarily call it a test. You make it as big. You make it as big as you can. It's getting bigger and bigger. So maybe it should have the attention that it deserves. That's what I mean. Not just using as a test, but there will be more attention just because people want to make sure that the host countries know what they're doing. Means more viewership. Means maybe it helps actually to finally break one of the last remaining glass ceilings for the women's game. That's how I approach that thought process, and not the other way around.
Sure. No, and I understand that that's what you did. I could see others maybe perhaps interpreting that if FIFA were to do it in a different way. So that's the only complication I'll give to that. But I do think that the answer is something that's not senior men's. I think we agree on that point. And I don't know. I like the tournament. It'd be a shame to see it go, but it's not a video game, right? And I have to remind myself, these aren't robots. This isn't a video game. You can't just ultimately have them playing 12 months a year and hope to maintain the quality. And I think we see that, and we're seeing that more and more in the international game, where the quality has dropped since when I was a kid, in my opinion. Maybe that's just my adult brain interpreting things differently.
And if you just take Alexis Sanchez case once again, 4 summers where you basically have 3 weeks split in 3 times of 1 week of summer, and we all know how Alexis Sanchez loves to take care of his dogs and go boating with his dogs and go climb Everest with his dogs, and poor man, he only has 3 weeks of summer for the last few years. So yeah, it is something that sometimes we forget because we're here watching and enjoying their exploits, but you do need time off. We would go crazy if we had only a few vacation weeks a year. We do go crazy when we only do have that. Why do we wish that on other people?
Yeah, well, exactly. All right, with the last couple minutes left in this segment, we're going to switch gears completely, and I want to talk about the NASL and San Diego. There's some high suggestions that some big players, Demba Ba and Hazard, were involved in an investment group that will be going into the NASL in San Diego. Whenever I hear this, Kevin, whenever I hear big names attached to an investment going into the NASL, the first thought that crosses my mind is, Do they know it's not MLS?
No, the first thought that crossed my mind is, do they even know that they're doing this? Because it's probably just like an investment group that they're part of, which they give them money and they expect interest coming back to them. They expect a bigger, more amount of money coming to them. It's probably more like used by their financial help or their financial advisor that actually so are they actually aware, Eden Hazard and Dembaba, that they are going maybe to invest in San Diego? That's my question.
Well, yeah, it's also possible that their investment level could be at such a point that it's not really a major contributor to this. Like you say, it's like they're investing X amount a month into an investment group, and then that investment group in turn is investing X amount. So really, when it comes down to it, it's like pennies on the dollar that they're putting in. But
as much as Will Ferrell is investing with LAFC, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's a nice little you put your name on it, so it allows those groups to go, hey, we've got this, and they'll try and convince them to fly in for a press conference or something. But look, the other side of this, of course, is and there was an interesting tweet by Charles Bone earlier today talking about how NASL's business structure and the one sort of laissez-faire way that they approach things does give them one advantage over MLS. It allows them to move very quickly into these markets that they deem desirable. But the question is, does it matter? Does the people involved investing in NASL in San Diego, are they doing it in there to get on the ground floor because they want to have an NASL team, or are they thinking we put an NASL team in here, then maybe we have a better chance of getting an MLS team and then we move later on? Like, that's the questions that I have when it comes to this. We've talked a lot on how I like this market, but go ahead.
No, Duane, it's either that or an opposition, like the opponents in San Diego that want maybe to start up the project before, because with the NSL it could maybe happen quicker than Major League Soccer, and get a franchise now. Maybe that's what they want to do. And like in Miami, started up before the other team, and maybe the other team never shows up, and you actually have a foothold of the town. So maybe that's the thought process. Once again, I think that's the word. That's the words of the day. Thought process. I think that's what the thought process is let's get something started before here and maybe get a hold of the market.
Well, and the question that that you do have from that is the market already? Is there already a foothold in the market? It's just over the border, right? It is Zula's country, and whether or not, I think an MLS team would have to fight hard to sort of take the attention away from that. I think ultimately an MLS team could be successful there because eventually the fans, I think, especially the fans that aren't of Mexican descent, would see that team as an ability to watch top football that didn't necessarily involve a border crossing, and then particularly in the climate politically now, maybe you don't want to go across that border too often. So I think it would benefit them that way. But NASL, that's a different level that you're talking about there, and it would be pretty challenging. All right, Kevin, let's take a break, come back, and we'll wrap the show with a Canadian review.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Kevin?
Yes, that's me.
What the hell happened in Montreal on the weekend?
Yes. There's something with Columbus and 4-1 score. And for some reason, I still had hope, because I'm like, well, there's still a Kamara playing here, and Higuain's on the field too. So maybe they're going to get into a disagreement and fight over something, and the Impact can pull off a comeback. But I forgot that Didier Drogba's not here, and I forgot as well that
it's the different Kamara.
It's the different Kamara. It's the nicer one. And, Montreal can't defend, apparently.
Yeah, look, was it a case of maybe them thinking ahead until tomorrow? I mean, that's the only question I had. It seemed like a pretty poor effort.
I think it's case of, if you want to use it that way, maybe they thought of the effort they were going to put out to make sure they had some less on Tuesday for some players. I don't think that's the case. I think maybe fatigue, yes. Maybe the amount of games may. I think the injuries play a bigger factor than we imagine with this team. Players playing out of position, players being asked maybe not necessarily too much, but asked to do different things, and the instincts are not there. The change of formation in the back line is still being worked on, and a lot of kinks that are trying to be worked out of this formation. So I'm still waiting to see the biggest result. In theory, it's supposed. Here's a theory that Mauro Biello, one part of the theory that he was okay to make public mention after I think it was last week, where he mentioned the idea behind this formation is to allow the fullbacks, the extra fullbacks. So you have the 5-man back line, or a 5-3 or 3-5, depending on where in the game, right? Because they overlap, right? Those two fullbacks. So with the presence of those in probably the midfield and even in the final third, should be able to liberate some space in the actual middle of the midfield for Piatti and Zamali to have maybe a little bit more space to be effective and have more time, because when there's an overlap on the wings, it creates a bit more space and it helps the entire team move forward, which ball possession is a little bit better forward, which means you have a bit more time on the ball, which means if Piatti's got more time on the ball, he can go against like 5 guys, because Piatti, yes, he's better than you, and he's better than me, and he's better than a lot of players in this league. So I think that's the idea behind this formation change, but there's still a lot of practice to be done, like game time. There's nothing that beats game time. Scrimmage might be fun, but there's nothing like quite playing a game, and I think it does need some game time. Is it the ideal formation for the future, for the roster, for the players they do have now? Those are all questions that I don't necessarily have the answer so far.
All right, fair enough. Kevin is traveling tomorrow morning, so we're not entirely sure what tomorrow's going to look like. So I might as well ask you now.
Yeah, I'm probably how about that, brainstorming live on radio, Duane. I'm going to bring my setup to do some live videos and stuff. So we'll probably meet up before the game, have a little bit of video, and have some fun, and we'll see after the game as well.
All right, fair enough. Real quickly though, does this put a damper on your hopes for Tuesday, or you think this is just one of those things? Columbus is your bogey team.
Oh, it does. There's the Anthony Jackson injury. That'll be interesting to see what's the ramification of it. It seems like nothing, and then he subbed off a bit after halftime, and he had difficulty walking back to the dressing room after the game. And you're wondering how serious it is. The Daniel Lovitz injury, of course, Ambrose Oyongo gone for the season injury. Ballou's not back to 100%. Players that have a little knock here and there. Patrice Bernier didn't play on Saturday to keep him fresh, probably for Tuesday. Because if you're looking at the Canadian contingent, the 3 starters that you need on Tuesday, well, it's kind of a slim pickings. So I wouldn't be surprised once again to see Juan de la Fèvre start in the defense, to have Patrice Bernier and Maxime Crépeau. You would have your 3 Canadian starters with those 3.
I think that's probably no doubt that's what it'll be. I don't think there's many other options there. Is there really?
Well, because of there was David Choignard and Louis Belangolette, but because of injuries, both players are not necessarily at their ball. Louis Belangolette is injured, and David Choignard, I think, had a little setback in his injury. We have seen play a few weeks ago, so maybe he could be a name added to the list tomorrow. But outside of him, there's probably no other option. Yeah, like you mentioned.
I was talking on serious when I was with Aaron Papernick the other day and filling in for Rudy. We did actually talk about Crépeau quite a bit with Lloyd Barker. What do you think the future of him is? Do you think that they have enough game time, enough playing time available to him to keep him happy?
It'll be a case of, can he be patient long enough? Can he wait long enough? Evan Bush has proven himself to be quite a goalkeeper. Ups and downs sometimes, and difficult decisions, but you have to look who's playing in front of him, and especially the fitness of the form more than the players in front of him. That doesn't necessarily help him. Like, he's not necessarily to blame in any of the 4 goals that happened on Saturday, right? So that doesn't help. But can Maxime Crépeau be patient enough? Is it a case where you do loan him out? Do you pull the Thibaut Courtois move? I don't know. Do you take a chance? Do you want to see him for a goalkeeper for your club for 10 years, and you're willing to risk 1 or 2 years now somewhere else for him to get the playing time you think he needs and bring him back? Or what do you do with Crépeau? That's interesting. On the national team level, I don't think there's any doubt that he's the next Borjan. He's the future probably goalkeeper of Canada for the long term, for the long run, and he's been groomed for that position. So yes, but you see already like improvement. The game that he played last week, the first game, it was a pretty solid game for Crepeau. Amazing saves from hard shot from deep against a top quality opponent, and you have seen Crepeau play a lot better throughout this tournament than at the beginning. So I do see a lot of improvement with a short amount of game time. So just imagine if you had even more game time, we would probably see even more improvement.
This is a case where can they not talk to Ottawa? I mean, I know Ottawa's got a veteran in there that, let in that famous goal. It seems like there's got to be a loan option for him, and maybe Montreal doesn't want to loan him. I don't know, because
that's my thinking process behind that is when you have a goalkeeper, even training just with the regular backline, you do still create the instinct, the communication channels. You create the awareness, the knowledge of the other players, and know where they're going, and that needs to be built up over the years. That chemistry, and if you loan him all the time to Ottawa and he comes back, or Ottawa and like Salazar this year, let's just say, I think there's a risk that you get lost in that chemistry because of the amount that you need to change and to adapt. And I think over the long term, if you want to have him stay in Montreal and you think Laurent Simon is going to be here for the next 5 years, and you think that Lefebvre, the Camara, and Liongo, and your backline is going to be the same for a few years, you kind of want Crepeau to become better and have a better chemistry with those players so he can be useful down the road. So maybe they'll only that's where it gets that's where having no reserve team makes a big difference. And I think the biggest casualty of that is Maxime Crepeau.
Yeah, and look, I think that if you're a Impact fan, the one place when it comes to the biggest place to me where you might be able to criticize the Impact on dropping that, and we understand the financial realities of it, but is exactly with Crepeau. He could train with the first team and still play for FC Montreal, right? Like, I mean, that would
I like he did like last year, exactly, because he was the third keeper of the Impact last year. Eric Kronberg was a second. They switched this year, and Eric Kronberg almost acts more as a goalkeeper coach, goalkeeper Reggie Dunlop type of situation, and it's all well and good. He's very good at that, and he's a student of the game, and I always enjoyed my conversations about goalkeeping with Eric Kronberg, and as well with the new goalkeeper coach for Montreal Impact this year, Jack Stern, former goalkeeper coach of FC Montreal too. There's like a new relationship, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Jack Stern was a goalkeeper coach of FC Montreal, working a lot game time with Maxime Crepeau too, that the two are now in the first team. I think it bodes well for Maxime Crepeau's future. But again, I think it's a 1 to 2 year waiting period left for Maxime Crepeau. So if he can wait long enough, and if somebody else doesn't come in to want to give him an opportunity, I think he might be the Impact's goalkeeper of the future in 1 or 2 years down the road.
Yeah, when you look at the Fury from a Fury perspective too, we should talk about that. They are doing quite well. They're only one loss in their last 5. They have gone from a slow start into a solid playoff spot right now, 5th spot. They're looking up the table, not down the table right now. Charleston seems to be the dominant team in the East in many ways. Charleston, speaking of Canadian reviews, spanking TFC 2-6-1 this weekend. Not a good result there for the Young Reds, but who are in last place and once again look to be, I don't know what the hell they're doing with their USL side there, but at any rate, we'll have to see there. Kevin, let's turn our attention to Vancouver, though. The 2-2 draw, as Simon sort of touched on it in the last segment, they got out to the 2-0 lead. They blow that goalkeeping error, perhaps, on one of the goals. It seems to epitomize the Whitecaps in many ways. They look good, then they don't look good, and then they look good, then they don't look good. That's to me what the Whitecaps season has been.
Yeah, interesting too. They want to create that Vancouver-Minnesota rivalry type of, because they used to play against each other back in the day. Well, that's something different in the former NASL and USL type of second division they were in. You're right, Duane. They have great moments. They're showing, like, with the firepower they do have, they can take leads, they can score on the road. But keeping the momentum, defending, I think it's the name of the game. And I think it's a very similar situation, Vancouver and Montreal. Montreal might be a little deeper in the standings. But if they could keep it to 1 or no goals every single game, they can score 2. So kind of seems easy, but I know it's more difficult in reality. But that seems to be the big difference this year for Minnesota, just like for Vancouver, just like Montreal. Need to defend a little better.
Yeah. Ain't that the way? And in terms of Edmonton, it's so sad talking about Edmonton. 9 goals scored for in 13 games. They are by far the lowest scoring team in the NASL. It is really kind of depressing how little they score. The next lowest scoring team has 15. So there you go, with less game played. So not much to talk about Edmonton. Colin Miller said that their biggest priority during the summer break, or the spring to fall break, I guess is what they call it, is to find someone who can put the damn ball in the back of the net. But that's been the story of Canadian soccer at pretty much every level forever. So
isn't it the story like of every single soccer team though? Like, let's find a scorer. Let's find someone that can score. Yeah, like we're not trying. That's the name of the game. We're trying to get someone that can score. It's a lot tougher than it seems.
When goal scoring is at a premium, finding someone who can score is ultimately what you always are going to succeed with. This whole adage about defense winning championships, yeah, you have to have an okay defense. You can't have a bad defense. TFC 2015 told us that. But you need someone to score goals. And FC Edmonton only 9 goals scored in 13 games. You're not going to win many games when you're not putting the ball in the back of the net. The best you can hope for is the draw. And you only get 1 point for a draw. You get 3 for a win. So, hey, you got to score goals to get those 3 points. Kevin, speaking of scoring goals, TFC, a tight one, but they got it done on Friday. Look, New England sort of they made the mistake. I think that the error that they made, and Kurt Larson actually pointed this out, I'll give him credit for it, is that teams that come into BMO and sit back and try and defend for 90 minutes, they don't tend to succeed against this TFC team. You've got to get out in the front foot. And I think this is something the Impact understand. And I'll say this about the Impact, is when Toronto struggles with Montreal, because Montreal presents something to them on the attack. They do defend, but they defend the middle, and then they try and get out in the flanks, and they try and get up there and hit them on the counter. That's Montreal's strength. And Toronto does struggle with that because they're bombing up with their wing backs. And teams that just ignore that and allow Justin Morrow, U.S. international Justin Morrow now, finally, late in his career, allow him to run havoc, they're going to struggle against them. TFC was unlucky not to have more than one. Javinko got that late goal in stoppage time, and the amount of weight that came off his back when he scored that goal, he scored it right in front of the south end too, ran to the Capo stand. The Capo ran down. It was Seba on Seba action because the Capo's named Seba too. So anyway, there we go. It was kind of exciting in that south end, but kind of a workmanlike win, but a win nonetheless. TFC maintains its lead on top of the Supporter Shield standings.
What is your thoughts on Toronto heading into tomorrow's game, the final of the Canadian Championship, the second leg, and the 4th game in 11 days for Toronto?
They do not want to play in August. That is my thought. And they are going to put everything on the table, even at the possibility of them sacrificing the game on the weekend. Although I think that they believe they have enough depth that they're going to be okay on the weekend, even if they put everything forward. Josie and Mike and Bradley are staying back. So that will allow them to push forward there in that way. Would not even shock me if you saw a full 90 from Javinko, although they may do something similar to what they did on the other half. But they definitely do not want to play Tuesday. They are very much, TFC is very much motivated by what they feel is a slight, that that Champions League spot was taken from them, even though they felt that they earned it. They had earned it. There's no feeling about it. They had, and then it was taken away. That is literal fact, not interpretation. They feel slighted by that, and they want to go out and prove a point. Now, as I said a moment ago, they've gotten the better of Montreal just barely over the past couple of years. They're very well matched, and I think that's tactics make contests in a lot of ways. And I think that Montreal sort of matches up well against Toronto. So it's going to be an exciting game. I'm looking forward to being in the stadium for this one. It's always good when there's a cup presented at the end. It's especially good when it's a cup that I purchased 1% of back in the day. So there you go.
And again, as Duane mentioned earlier, I will be traveling to the game tomorrow, leaving Montreal in the morning and arriving downtown in the afternoon and pulling a all-nighter coming back to Montreal. Be there in Toronto to cover this championship game to the extent that it deserves. And for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Until tomorrow, as always. Well, tomorrow as in our Facebook page and later during the day. And just follow us on social media and you might see our faces as well pop up here and there. So until then, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.